Well, I was thinking today that maybe I'd do another 2020 Bible Thoughts devotional video. Haven't done one for a while, and sometimes I'm not really sure if it's helping anybody at all. I mean, either way, it's fine. So I had some time today. Sometimes I don't have time to get one of these ready, but today I had some time. Wanted to put another one out there. Again, still looking through Philip DeCourcy's book, Emergency Rations, and reading the devotions that he has there and trying to relate some of those things to you. This one is on the idea of small being a big deal. It's still in the section Surviving the Struggle to Gain Perspective. So thinking about the realities we find in our world, you ever notice that it's the big things that tend to get the attention? I mean, it's understandable, but the big names get more attention than people nobody's ever heard of, and big churches tend to draw the attention more than the small faithful churches, and big events get more news coverage than little things that are happening. I understand those things, obviously, and you do as well. But how many of you out there would say that you're not a very a big person in these realms? I mean, I'm not, and most of you are probably not either. We're not celebrities, we're not superstars, we're not known people other than our immediate circles. You're just a normal person going about your quiet life, and sometimes we may feel that there's really not much that we do that makes a difference. And I want to encourage you to think about the reality that that's not a very good perspective. What you do does make a difference. But let me try to share with you why I would say that. In the chapter from Philip DeCourcy, he shares an example of a seminary professor just after the time of the Civil War, so late 1860s. He really believed that more godly pastors were needed who were expounding the truth of God in a way that would help heal the wounds of the Civil War. And so he's at this, I think, Southern Baptist Seminary or Southwestern Baptist. Anyway, he's at this seminary, and he decides he's going to do this training for pastors on preaching. And only one student shows up, a blind student at that. But he said, it doesn't matter. God's led me to do this. I'm going to do the best job I can. And he produced a series of lectures and things that he shared with this one student. But these lectures were all gathered into a book of teaching people how to preach. And that book was the major text taught to one student. But that book was the major text on sermons for decades. It had a huge influence and still does in some circles. That's kind of a large impact from something that seemed very small. In another book recently, I was reading about the story of a guy named Mr. Kimball, who probably most of you have never heard of unless you were in my devotionals at Men's Breakfast last time. There was a Sunday school teacher in 1858 who was teaching a Sunday school class to young men, and to young men in this case, and led to Christ a shoe clerk in Boston named Dwight. His last name was Moody. Dwight Moody became a very well-known evangelist and founded Moody Bible Institute. And you can actually trace the thread from Moody clear on through a number of other people. But of note, the salvation of Dwight Moody, because Mr. Kimball shared Christ with a young man in a Sunday school class, led to an evangelist named Billy Sunday some ways down the road. Billy Sunday led thousands to Christ. Billy Sunday invited this other guy to come and do an outreach or an evangelistic meeting, and a guy named Billy got saved. Billy Graham got saved and talked to tens of thousands of people that came to Christ at Billy Graham crusades. And so again, the small things often are not very small. There's a principle here that we can talk about. So God cares very much about the small things. In reality, nothing done for God is small. And Jesus himself spoke of this truth a couple of times at least. I want to look at a couple of them. Jesus shares that faithfulness in the small things leads to greater things. In Luke chapter 16, verse 10, it says, "One who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much, and one who is dishonest in a very little is also dishonest in much." It's not the size that matters, it's what's being done and how it's being done. There's no small thing there, Jesus is saying. These little things show the larger things, or can lead to larger things. Again, in Luke 19, verse 17, again, Jesus speaking, he's given this parable, the parable of the 10 minas, 10 talents. He said to them, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Because you have been faithful in very little, you shall have authority over 10 cities." It was just a small thing, and yet it led to larger things. So we know that in some cases, faithfulness in the small stuff leads to a larger privilege of service. So that's one aspect. But another thing to think about is that we want to remember that the small things also have value in themselves. Whether they lead to larger things or not, they have value in themselves. It made me think, when I was on that point or that thought in my own mind, it made me think of Matthew chapter 25. The idea that small things have value. I mean, does giving somebody a shirt or a drink of water seem like a small thing? Yeah, it is, for sure. But do you remember this this account that Jesus is sharing in Matthew 25? It's the one about the final judgment. And the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, and here's these good things I have for you." Because, and this is what Jesus says, for Jesus says, "I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me." And then they answer, Jesus says, "Jesus, we don't remember when we saw you in these situations and ministered to you." They say, "When did we see you hungry, feed you, thirsty, or give you a drink? When did we see you a stranger, welcome you, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?" And the king, Jesus, will answer them, "Truly I say to you, as much as you did it for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did it for me." These little things, when they're done out of love for Christ, are actually, in some curious, mystical sort of way, they're done for Christ himself. Small things have great value. So whatever you do for God, do it with great joy. Even the little things, knowing that they bring joy and honor to God. You know, not many of us will ever do big things, honestly. But realize that little things happen a lot more often than big things. And they actually add up to a great deal of weight altogether throughout your life as you're serving Christ. So God knows what you're doing, large or small. And to God, small is a big deal. Until next time, stay in step with the Savior.